Chapter 1. The Star Fallen in the World from Mother's Sky. Maybe there is nothing easier than breathing. Even the newly born child breathes so easily. Even the sleeping person breathes so easily. Even the swimming fishes, the flying birds, the animals, flowers, leaves breathe so easily. Like the wind blows even without noticing. Like getting life even without noticing. We breathe. Maybe there is nothing more difficult than breathing too. While running to win the race of life, one falls down just because of the smallest cause and he can't breathe anymore. Whilst riding, whilst singing, whilst winning the world, the most powerful person of the world also can't breathe. The green tree withers, the blossoming flower falls. Even the lifetime experience of breathing deceives. The easiest thing becomes the most difficult thing. Maybe, just like breathing, forgetting is easy too. As I've forgotten how I was born, sucked my mother's milk, how easily the 2 years of continuously sucking up milk is forgotten. Maybe, like breathing, forgetting is very difficult too. I had to forget my own life, colorless life. If it had to be colorless, it would have been better to be colorless and yet transparent like water and infinite like sky. My own breath and conscience has been resisting me from forgetting. Difficult, so difficult. Nothing is more difficult than to remember too. I had to forget the whole life that's been living like an indelible memory in my heart and remember how I was born. No, I don't know the soil in which I was born, the night I was born, the base of guava tree behind our home where I was born, my mother's face and her pain when I was born. My mother used to say I was born at night. That night, just like any other night, before the sun rises, she woke up and went to the tap. Unlike other villages, not too far, just far enough to take half an hour to carry water back to home. After doing it the third time, she put down the water on the patio and she looked to the east and sighed. That moment, the first rays of the sun touched my mother's face, then her belly, where I was, then the whole body. In that moment, my mother had a feeling that the rays entered inside through her eyes, where I was, and felt warm joy. She placed her right hand to her big belly and thought, may the brightness of the sun reach here. Maybe it didn't reach, lest my life would be sunny. The 7 colors of the sun would blossom 7 colored flowers in my life too, even though it went dark whilst daylight, even though sometimes it was cloudy and rainy. After everything's done, it would be more clean and sunny. But the sun didn't shine in my life. Like a state where there is always darkness and where 5 feet thick snow falls, which always drowns me. In that moment, my mother didn't touch her belly, she touched me. I was there inside her belly, but she didn't know one white flower was blossoming inside her. I want to remember at least one single moment inside my mother's womb. Was I not alive there? I want to remember being alive inside my mother's womb. After finishing household work, my mother went to the jungle to get some grass. Just like any other day, she brought a big pile of grass. When she put down that heavy load near the shade, it sounded like the land nearly had shaken. My grandmother looked from the patio. She looked at the pile of grass before looking at my mother, who was exhausted and soaked with sweat, and she was happy to see the big pile of grass. She was even more happier to see the big belly of my mother. My father, who had gone to Pokhara for shopping, hadn't returned yet, even till the evening. My mother looked his way till it was bright enough. After a bit, the darkness blocked the way. Having fed every one in the family, she waited till late for my father. It was time to turn the lights off, but my father hadn't arrived yet. My mother felt uneasy. The uneasiness was increasing beyond endurance. That uneasiness was caused by me. She couldn't eat the rice she was eating. She couldn't wash up the dishes. Sighing, she lay down on the bed. She was in pain. The labor pain. I was causing the pain beyond endurance. Inside my mother's womb, was I a living flower or a thorn? The night was getting dark. The pain was getting darker. It was more difficult to endure the pain. In the midst of the pain, my mother looked at my father just to find an empty bed. My mother then remembered my father had gone to Pokhara the day before. Back then, even if my father was there, what would she say to my father? She opened the small window and looked outside. The dark night spread into my mother's eyes. If it was a full moon night, the full moon would have shone in my mother's eyes. The full moon would come with its touch and caress the pain slowly. Grandfather, grandmother, uncle, and aunt, everyone was sleeping. When it became unbearable, my mother went outside, fidgeting. She couldn't even tell the ones that were sleeping in the same house. Don't know whether she could tell her own husband, who planted the seed of the pain in her, even if he was there. The silence behind the house, where there was the closest relative who would support my mother, like my mother, the pregnant guava tree. There were small sprouts on the branches of the tree, somewhere blossoming flowers too. The white flowers of guava tree wasn't even visible due to the darkness, but the blossoming countless stars in the sky were visible. My mother grabbed the base of the guava tree strongly, with all her might. Even the tree shook a bit. The dews on the leaves and the flowers fell down. Due to the unbearable pain, like the dews, tears must have fallen from her eyes. I was born. The night saw me. The moon couldn't see me, but the countless stars saw me. That's why my mother named me Tara. But the stars have become my father's relatives, who always mock me, whom bright hands could never touch. If the moon had seen me born, maybe she would have named me Indu or Purnima, and the brightness of moon would always touch me. I don't know how much pain my mother endured when I was born. Mother would always tell the tale of the pain of bearing me, even in the late days, laughing. Just as my mother endured pain when I was born, didn't my body, as young as her uterus, feel pain too? Yes, I want to remember the pain of being born just once. I want to remember being born. If I could remember the pain of being born, I would also tell my mother the tale of the pain of being born, just like my mother grabbed the base of the guava tree and pushed. How much I had pushed myself with fists tight from inside her womb. I want to remember the pushing and the struggle from inside my mother's womb to come into the world and touch the land for the first time. Yes, I want to remember the light fisted effort and rebellion to come into this big world from the small world inside my mother's womb. Had to cry right after the birth. I didn't. Cried after a while. Cried screaming in a loud voice. Mother used to say, those who suffer a lot cries a lot after birth, that he or she had to suffer in the world. Maybe the touch of the dews that fell from the guava tree was the first touch in my body. I want to remember the first touch of the dews. A couple of sparrows who had their nest on the top of the guava tree were also awakened by my cry. The sparrow chicks that were sleeping under the blanket of their parents' wings were also awakened. They started to chirp. My cry awakened my grandmother and then grandfather and others too. If my father was home, maybe he would wake up first. The old and thick wood door opened. The neighbors nearby also opened their eyes first and then their doors. Crying at the midnight, I awakened so many. Make them open their doors. At least I want to remember the first time I cried. Where did I learn to cry? Inside mother's womb there was neither the place to cry nor to laugh, neither the place to lie sideways nor to prone. How did I stay there? While in my mother's womb, inside the warm blanket of her uterus, for such a long time, did I feel pain or joy? I don't remember. Forgetting the whole life, I just want to remember that moment. How was I introduced to tear and cry right after I was born? That same tear and cry hasn't left me even today. Even when all of my loved ones leave me, this tear and cry doesn't leave me. Instead, the more the age grows, the more the tear and cry are with me. These are my life partners. Life partner means the one who are with you from the birth till death. Why do people call husband and wife the life partners? They can't be with each other from the birth till death at any cost. My life partners, tear and pain, who doesn't leave me till the death, just like shadows. Oh, the shadows doesn't even leave my corpse after the death. I want to remember the soil and the grass beneath the guava tree touching my young body. I want to remember my mother's hand touching me for the first time. How difficult it must have been to feed on my mother's breast milk. I want to remember the difficultness, yet life-giving joy of feeding on my mother's breast milk. The moment when my mother picked me up on her two palms and took me on her lap for the first time I got bathed, the first kiss of my mother, the first time she oiled me, the first handful of food fed by my mother, the first word I heard and learned, the first lovely slap on my cheek, the first time I lied sideways by myself, walking with four hands and legs, and the walk on my two legs, grabbing my mother's hand. I want to remember them. Right after the birth, the first breath I breathed in this big world, maybe that was the most deepest, living, and joyful breath. I want to remember the first time I breathed, and maybe the last breath will be as lifeless and as painful as ever. To really remember is the moment when one can remember the pain he or she endured while being born, just like a mother remembers the pain of bearing a child. I want to remember the moment I got life. Back then, the situation was different, but imagine if somebody had taken a photo of it and shown it to me. Even then, I wouldn't remember that moment. How far has my sufferings gone, leaving me behind, whom I can't even meet, no matter what? As long as I remember, I have always seen colorful earth, colorful sky, colorful rainbow, colorful flowers. But how come in this colorful nature I am a colorless rainbow, colorless earth, seven-colored life, just like a rainbow from which countless colors come forth? But in this colorful life given by the nature, who put snow like white and cold blanket over me? No matter how much they try to make it colorless, beneath the white dress I also have red blood like others. No matter how much they try to make it cold by putting over the white snow, I also have hot blood like others. I heard I was born in the year of big earthquake, 1990 BS, which is 1933 AD. But for me, that earthquake is an incident just like my birth, which I can never remember, just like the earthquake that comes very shortly but affects for a long time. An earthquake came into my life, and for the lifetime, like a life, it left a deep impact. I want to remember all these various moments, which I can't remember no matter how hard I try. In return, I want to forget my entire life that's in my remembrance. But I can't remember the life I want to remember, only remember the life I want to forget. End of chapter 1.